On time, and Tony Mahar, our guest speaker, has arrived, the Energy Infrastructure Commissioner. But we also have the Deputy Infrastructure Commissioner, which is Caroline, right up the bank. So we've got 1 and 2, and we also have Michael here as well. Sorry, away you go.
Yeah, Michael Whittington, okay? Policy.
Michael Whittington, policy. Welcome. We're welcoming you, that's all. Thank you very much. The crops look excellent. I must say we've been, the Bureau of Meteorology has been forecasting El Nino, which means drought. And every time they forecast it rains again. And I just think, wow, let them keep forecasting and let the rains keep coming. The crops do look absolutely magnificent. Now we have the Australian Energy Infrastructure Commissioner. This is a very important role, and the Energy Infrastructure Commissioner should be all about community consultation and transparency. But let's hear what Tony Mahar has to say. And welcome Tony Mahar to the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ross. I'm happy not to use this microphone. I've got a pretty loud voice. Do you want a microphone or no microphone? Yeah. Microphone, okay. Well, thank you, Ross. Thank you, everyone, for your time this evening. I'm sure you've got other things that you'd be rather doing on a Monday night, but I genuinely appreciate you turning up and having me here. And my purpose here is to come along and tell you about a very short segment on myself, but a bit more about the office and what we do and what my role is. But I'm also just as interested in hearing from you about the challenges and concerns and frustrations that you have, so that I can amplify that voice to the people that I talk to. So I really hope that I get something out of this meeting, but I really hope that you get something out of the meeting as well. It's your time that you've given up, and I know my job is, I'll get into my job, but I go around the country doing these things, and I know how many consultations and meetings and forums and things that are on. So I don't take it lightly that on Monday night you guys have turned up to actually have your AGM, of course, but I really appreciate the chance to hear from you and tell you a little bit about what I'm doing. So that's what I'd like to do tonight, give you a bit of an update on my role, what I'm seeing across the country, and importantly, what I can do and what I can't do. So I want to be really clear about that my role is limited, but it is a role, and I'm really pleased that I've got the role. So let me start there. 30 seconds on myself. I've been in and around agriculture all my life. I'm based in Canberra, but I went to Ag College, worked for Elders, worked for the Department of Ag. I've worked in agriculture all my life, and I'm really passionate about agriculture. I love the industry, I love rural and regional communities. So I have most recently been CEO of the National Farmers Federation for about 10 years. And at the end of that role, because I needed to move on and do something else, I wanted to do something where I thought I could make a difference, where I could deal with agriculture, deal with rural and regional communities, and try and help the industry and the rural and regional communities that I'm very passionate about. This role came up. The role is an independent role. It was established by the previous coalition government, and the role was originally wind commissioner. It was broadened, and a guy by the name of Andrew Dyer, which some of you might have met before, had the role for, I think, about 10 years, 10 or 12 years, and he was an energy expert. I'm not an energy expert. I have a passion for agriculture. I understand agriculture. I've worked on farms. I haven't owned a farm, but I've worked in agriculture all my life. So I'm not an energy expert, but the role itself is independent from government. So I was appointed by this federal government for a 3-year term, and I'm about 2 years in. I report to Chris Bowen. He's the Energy and Climate Change Minister, and I meet with him every 3 months to give him an update on what I'm hearing, what I think should happen in terms of making the energy transition as smooth and as fair as it possibly can. I am apolitical. I don't have political views. I am technology neutral, agnostic. My job is to help the community address the concerns and challenges and frustrations that they're hearing. It's a national role, so I spend a lot of my time doing these sorts of meetings, sitting around kitchen tables from the Territory to Tasmania, from Albany to Albury, right across the country. And I've spent the last 18 months or 2 years going around the communities that are dealing with the transition, renewable energy. So I cover batteries, wind, solar, hydro, and yeah, that's all. Sorry, and I should have introduced, I've got Carolyn Francis, who's the Assistant Commissioner, and Michael Whittington from my team. So we've got a small team, and half are based in Melbourne, half are based in Sydney, and I'm in Canberra. So yeah, that's my job. And so we take complaints. So if any of you have got complaints about, I imagine you might have some complaints about how this process is going. Ross mentioned the planning process. We take complaints and we can take them up with the relevant parties. So whether that's Sonia Kilkenny, or whether it's Jack Symes, or whether it's energy companies. I spend a lot of my time doing these sorts of things, but I also spend a lot of time talking to other stakeholders like the West Winds, like the Iberdrolas, like the Stromlo Energy, TAG Energy. So I can tell them, amplify the voices, the concerns that I'm hearing in these sorts of forums. So take complaints, push best practice. So I've got a terms of reference, there's about 6 or 8 terms of reference, and one of them is to make sure that we push best practice in terms of community engagement, consultation, transparency, best practice. So even though I don't have a view on the technology or climate change, I don't get into those debates because it's not a role that I want to, or a debate that I want to get into. So I'm not going to have those tonight, but what I do want to hear about is the concerns and frustrations and things that you think need to be addressed. And it sounds like you've addressed them through submissions to EESs and things like that. I think there is a lot of transparency and a lot more understanding that needs to be had in terms of the way decisions are being made, the way that communities are being consulted, the benefits that are being shared, and ultimately, my view is, if and when this transition continues to happen, and it has been happening for decades, it'll probably happen for another couple of decades, my view and why I took this job on, so when Chris Bowen said to me, do you want this job? I said, if I'm going to take the job on, I'm not going to be a clerk just stamping complaints and doing so. I actually want to make a difference. I want to make sure that rural and regional communities are better off from this transition. You can argue whether we need the transition or not. I'm not having that argument. It's happening. So I want to make sure that rural and regional communities are better off. That's my goal. That's why I took the job on. All right? So I had a few slides, but I won't go through them. I'll just make sure that I cover everything: wind, solar, pump hydro, large batteries, and transmission. Sorry, that was the other thing I didn't look at. We make information available. So I am independent. I won't report to Chris Bowen, but I'm independent. I'm housed in the Department of Climate Change, but I'm not an employee of the government. I'm paid by the government, but I'm not a Department of Climate Change and Environment department. My two staff are, but I'm a contractor. So I'm independent. And when Chris said, do you want the job? I said, well, I'm not going to be a patsy and just sort of nod and say, yes, everything's all right. So I've got no qualms at all about telling people what I think, and I have done, and I've burned a few bridges or blown up a few planks in a few bridges at least. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I can solve all your problems, but I'm also not going to shy away from the hard conversations, and I haven't. And I've said that from the beginning. I'm genuine, I'm honest, I'm going to do the job to my best of my ability, and I'm not going to pull any punches. If I see something that's not up to standard, I'm going to call it out. I have done. So what is it that you say, oh, so what have you done, Tony? Well, a couple of examples where in and around the country, outside Canberra, the Gas Valley, for example, just to sort of demonstrate the sorts of things that I do. Right? So got an energy company managing director out there and said, you've actually got to come out and meet with these farmers and landholders. There's no point sitting in Sydney or Brisbane or wherever. You've actually got to sit around the table with them, look them in the eye and say, here's what's happening, here's what the plan is, and listen to their concerns. Now, it's a bit of a risk. I went out on him and I said to this CEO, who I didn't know that well, but I know a little bit better now. I said, trust me, Brick, come out and actually sit with these people, have the hard conversations. The sick of sort of graduates and things coming out to their farms or out to the communities and not seeing the decision makers. He was good enough to come out and he sat with a group of people. Now, the development's still going ahead, but what an achievement was, in my mind at least, is that the managing director, the CEO of the company, actually met with the people in their community, saw what the impact of the renewable energy infrastructure was in that community for his own eyes, and made some changes. Now, there's still turbines there, but he was able to move some things and adjust a couple of things, and that to me was a demonstration that, sure, you know, there'll be some in this room and some in other rooms will see that because there's turbines or transmission lines and that's a fail. But it was a small step for me to say, well, you listen to people and you made some changes. I think that's a positive. Those sorts of things. Moving of workers' camps and things like that, changing of roads, access roads, those sorts of things that are frustrating to people like you in this room, that it's impacting on their days, their lives. They're sort of dropping the kids off at school, you know, worried about B-doubles coming up and down the laneway. Those sorts of things are practical, real-life issues that I know impact on community well-being. So that's what I try and do in addition to telling ministers, state planning ministers, that I don't think there's enough transparency around how decisions are being made, how the setbacks from turbines and things maybe haven't changed in the last 20 years, but the turbine heights have got to 300 metres, they used to be 80 metres. Those sorts of things is what I advocate for and say, if this is going to go ahead and if the community's going to be comfortable, we've got to make sure that they know that regulations and things are keeping up with technology, so for turbines and those sorts of things. Anyway, just an example of the sort of thing that I try and do. Upfront, honest and frank with those decision makers like ministers, but also industry people. So working with government at all levels, so federal, state and local, industry, peak groups and community members like yourselves. And the other role that I have, some of you might be familiar with Andrew Dyer and the community engagement review that he did a couple of years ago now, and it had 9 recommendations and 6 themes, and my job is to try and get those recommendations done. I'm not going to go into the recommendations, but it was about transparency, better community engagement. The results of that report said the community engagement was pretty appalling, so that's one of my jobs, is to try and get better community engagement, better consultation, so that the community feel like they're being heard. I also try and act as a trusted source of information. We know that there is a whole lot of information flowing out there. We're in the information age. There is a high level of either misinformation or misinterpretation or confusion around what's happening with a whole range of developments in this space. I want to be, and have tried to be, a trusted source of information. Now, yes, I'm paid by government, but the alternative is that I'll be paid, or someone like me in my role is paid for by industry. You know, I don't think community would want that either. So again, I take my role incredibly seriously, and integrity and credibility are not up for negotiation. So when we talk about things like decommissioning or contamination or insurance, I want to be a trusted source of information, because I'm not going to stand up in front of this room or any other room and not have the trust, and people think, oh, it's just a patsy for the government, you know, it's going to tell us all this life. I'm not interested in that at all. So you can hopefully take it from me that I want to be that trusted source of information and call stuff out wherever I can. I have facilitated discussions and dispute resolution, so it's not my go-to, but I've tried to dabble in that space, and that can be tricky at times. I do provide specific information to government, so whether that's in conversation with state ministers, but we're also providing information into inquiries and things where they're looking for an independent source of information. So I'm trying to influence policy in that way as well. The key or really important thing that some of you might know, but I want to just reinforce, is that I don't have the power to stop or start things. I'm not the planning minister, and each state has, thanks to Federation, has got the authority to say that things can or can't go ahead. And that's largely Sonia Kilkenny in this state, but the equivalent planning minister in every other state. So I get to these rooms and people say, oh Tony, you can stop this transmission line or stop that solar farm. I can't. Sorry, I can't do that, but what I can do is take your concerns up to those people that are making those decisions and either amplify them or tell them if they haven't been already told. So there is a limit to my powers. I don't have the power to start or stop anything or change the route or those sorts of things. You guys know well how detailed those things are, and in some ways I'm very glad that I don't have that responsibility, because they're incredibly complex and incredibly divisive decisions. So the sorts of things that I am seeing across the country, and there will be no surprise, but let me just run through them. Lack of genuine engagement, poor communication of planning processes, community benefits not being realised, communities afraid that they're going to be worse off from the energy transition, dis and misinformation making the disruption and the division and the conflict in the community as bad as I've seen it in some areas, and I think that is an incredibly bad outcome for the community to have conflict. And we've all got different views. I don't care whether it's on the colour the footy shed might be painted or whatever. I don't want to be flippant about it, but we've all got different views in the community about a whole range of things. That's what makes life interesting. It makes it, we don't want to be all thinking the same thing. But the division and the harassment, the bullying and the conflict in the community really troubles me. And I see it from both sides, or three sides if you like, all over the country. And the more I can do to try and help reduce that, I'm not saying it's going to totally go away, but that has been something that has really troubled me in a lot of communities that I've seen. The division, the bullying, the breakup of family and friendships and stuff like that. I don't think anyone wants, but I get it. It's an emotional issue. So I'm not saying that it's an easy one to get around, but it is something that troubles me. Obviously, impact on natural environment, disruption, we talked about that, cumulative impact. So what do we need to see for all those challenges? A clear and more compelling explanation, demonstration of the practical reasons and the benefits for communities from this transition, early management, better communication, recognition from industry and government that there is no one size fits all for community engagement, for community consultation, more comprehensive, transparent, countrywide planning framework, and more accountability from the industry. And one area where, one mechanism that I think is going to help drive better accountability is a thing called the developer rating scheme. So if anyone knows the previous commissioner's review, community engagement review, I think it was recommendation 5 or something, had a developer rating scheme. So all the developers, and they have to volunteer to do it, but let's put that aside, get a rating on their behaviour, on their community engagement review. Now, it's a small step forward. I can see some people shaking their heads, but it is a small step forward to say, is this person, is this company a good operator or not? Now, I'd rather have it than not have it. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it is one step, one tool that will help drive accountability. So councils can ask for it, community can ask for it, governments should be asking for it to mandate that all the developers use this developer rating scheme, and that way communities, hosts, anyone can see, is that person, is that company a good operator or not? So it's just one sort of small thing. I'm not saying it's going to solve everything, but it's one step towards better accountability. I've just got a couple more things to go, and then I'm interested to try and take questions. and any comments. I'm working on a couple of things that I hope are going to benefit communities like yours. One is to try and take the vagaries out of things like decommissioning. So if panels or turbines or batteries and things get put in and they are going to reach the end of their economic life at some stage, I hear a lot that community are concerned about, well, who's going to look after this thing in 30 and 40 years' time when I'm gone and my kids are here and the rest of the family's here and the community's stuck with turbines or batteries or panels. That decommissioning question of who owns the stuff and who's going to look after it 30 or 40 years hasn't been answered well enough. And so I'm working with all of the state governments to come up with an arrangement that gives more confidence and more comfort to communities to say it's off the table. The company that is developing this is responsible for its life. At the end of its life, whether it's been refurbished or taken down, and the community or the landholder isn't responsible for that asset. Now, I'm not there yet, but that sort of thing I hear a lot of, and I've got support from state governments and companies. I'm not there yet, but it is going in the right direction to say they'll be legally bound to it, there'll be money in the bank tied to the costs of managing that asset at the end of its life. So it's a work in progress, right? The other one that we're working on is public liability insurance. So if you live beside some panels or a turbine or some batteries and something happens on your farm or your premises and it impacts on that high value asset that you now live next door to and you're worried about your public liability insurance, your standard $20 million farm pack. I've got agreement from the companies and most of the insurance companies to say, they haven't announced it yet, it's still being worked on, but I'm just giving you a heads up that should be taken off the table. Again, from a landholder's perspective, there'll be a clause, a provision in the contract that stipulates, confirms that the surrounding neighbours aren't responsible for, in an accidental circumstance, any damage to that asset, it's a turbine or a panel or a battery or whatever. Because that's again another issue that I say, well, I get raised with me all the time. I live beside it, that there wasn't panels there yesterday, there is now. What happens if I start a fire grinding off a fence post or something and it burns into the next thing? Am I going to be liable for that $1 billion asset? The answer to that question is no, but we've got to get it in a contract, we've got to get the companies to public commit to it, so that the landholder has more confidence that they're not responsible for any damage. So those are the sorts of things that I think will make a difference. Are they going to solve everyone's problems? No. But if I can remove some of those irritations and concerns from the community, I will hopefully be making the situation better. Contamination, shadow flicker, noise, these sorts of fact sheets, independent fact sheets. Land values is another one that gets raised with me as well, providing information on that so that people can have confidence that the issue's being addressed. You know, 5 or 6 issues are standard whether you're in Horsham or Warwick-Nabil or whether you're in Queensland or Tassie. These are things that people are concerned about, and these are the things they want to try and do some stuff about. Right, so working on those sorts of things as well. The only other one, I suppose, or one of the other ones, is the cumulative impact. So some areas have got batteries and turbines and panels, and the community is saying, and this is the case outside Canberra and in a couple of other areas, where the community has hosted a whole range of renewable energy infrastructure, but there's more planned. So for example, there might be 100 turbines in a place and there's 300 more planned. I've got a view that there is a threshold for the community to say, we've done enough heavy lifting. There is enough here in this space that we need to get a hold on and manage the cumulative impact on the community. There is only so much, in my view, that a community should be able to be asked to bear. And there's got to be more data and more evidence and more analysis on what the community is being asked to bear and host and comply? What are the impacts? If this was 100 turbines and now there's 400, we've got to understand that better, so and that needs to go into the planning process. So that's another bit of work that I'm doing. So look, that's an overview of the sort of work that I'm doing, the role. I know there's lots of concern about VNI West and WRL and perhaps one or two companies. So I'm happy to take questions. I probably won't be able to answer or give you concrete answers on some of them, but I'll give it my best go. And if I can't answer it, you can contact me. I'm happy to give out my mobile phone and an email, and I'll answer the questions that I can.
All right, thank you very much. And we should put our hands together for Tony. One of the big issues around the WMEAP is the turbines that are proposed double the capacity of the ones that exist at Mahar today. The buffer zone has been halved from 2 kilometres to 1 kilometre. Is that fair on neighbours and people that are adjoining these proposed wind farms? I raised that with the Planning Minister, with Lily D'Ambrosio, the Energy Minister, and they were totally incompetent with how they answered that. They just changed the rules to suit themselves. But what about the neighbours and the people that are impacted?
Yeah, well, that's what I said before. I think it needs to be, it needs to be assessed and looked at. I'm really conscious that the turbines are now 300 metres high, and they used to be at 80 or 120. So I think 1.5 or 2 kilometres. There needs to be real evidence around the noise and the shadow flicker, and they need to take into account the community's concerns. And I've said that to the New South Wales Planning Minister. I've said it to the State Planning. I wrote to all the state ministers asking this exact question, because I think we need to have a better answer on that.
Are there any questions? Yes, Tracy.
Just on that point.
No,
Oh.
you're going to need the microphone. We've got too many tractor driver ears here.
Just to follow, Tony, what would your timeline be on getting answers to those?
To that question,
Those sort of questions?
I wish I had a better. I could just say it's a longer discussion. The responses that I've got back are probably the same ones that you've got, but I do think, and it's related to the cumulative impact, right? So I just think we've got to get better. And this is what I'm saying. This is what I was saying to the ministers. I just think we've got to get a better handle on the number of projects that are going in, the number of pieces of infrastructure, to make sure that we are absolutely clear on the impact for the community. So it's a longer question. I wish I could say it's 5 Ks or 6 Ks. I can't, but I'm actively pushing.
During the process, which was the Warragul Energy Park Planning Panel's inquiry, there was no capacity to consider the cumulative impacts around. So that project alone is 230 turbines. There are 940 turbines within 80 kilometres of Warragul that are proposed. This is monumentally big, but those considerations were explicitly excluded from discussion during that planning panel's inquiry run by the Victorian Planning Minister.
Yeah, I don't know the specific inquiry, but I do, as I said before, I think there needs to be really strong, robust assessment of what the impacts are. The impact on the community. It's the community that's hosting these turbines and panels and things. Now, so I'm in agreement. I'm not saying that there's a number of 134 or 135 too many or whatever. I'm just saying we need to get accurate, transparent, believable information on what the impact is, and then everyone knows. And I don't think the community's got enough confidence at the moment. There are across the country. I should have said this to you. And it might not be popular, but I'm going to say it anyway. There are communities and there are developments that have been done well, and we should learn from those. Right? You guys might not like them, but and I get there's different views in the community, but it's not every development or every project isn't bad. There are good pieces of work out there where the community's happy, they've been done well, so we need to learn from those. I don't want to shy away and say everything is terrible. There are a lot of things that need to be improved. But I've been to some projects where the community's like, we can live with this.
All right, well, we've been pushing very hard for community consultation and transparency right from the very, very start. Are there any other questions? Yes, up the back.
Yeah, Ash Marshall from Merrick Western Normanville. Thanks also to all this group. We've just had 2 planning permits go through in the last 5 months. One got the green tick last Monday, and a lot of people in this room have actually helped support us. And we're 150 k's away, but it's nice to have that extended like-minded group of people that have offered a bit of moral support to both my family and a fair few of our neighbours. Tony, I haven't met you on a Zoom meeting before. We deal with West Wind and Vira Energy. And we have 2 projects that are around both sides of our dwelling, like 2 kilometres. And we're going to have something like 80 turbines within 5 kilometres of our house. So it's pretty high impact. What we're really concerned about is what are you going to do? Like you've gone and had a little parallel to Vira, I understand, and you had a little chat to West Wind. They've put their planning application in. For instance, the West Wind project had 88 negative submissions and 8 positive. Where was your place in that? Like, we feel that maybe you've had that chat, you've had that consultation.
Yeah.
I don't think we're the only ones that have reached out to you, because there's been some pretty average behaviour. And it's sad to the point where I've actually thought, it's turning good people into bad people in our community. And that alludes to what you mentioned before. We're not going to have a CFA, we're not going to have a football club. It's really bad. And these people are coming in there and running roughshod over good people.
Yep.
So why aren't you intervening or having that mark put against them on their planning application?
Well, thanks, Ash. It's a good question, and I'd go back to my powers are limited. You might not like that, I might not like that, but it is what it is. I don't have the power to say, company X, you can't operate, or I'm going to change the rules and that turbine can't go there. I don't have that power, I'm sorry. But what I can do, and you might think it's useless, but I'm going to do it anyway, I can keep talking to the companies and you say, oh, it's bloody useless. Well, that's your opinion, and I'll keep talking to them, keep trying to get better change. That's all I can do. So I can not be in this role, and you might say, oh, no better off. That's your opinion. But
I'm not saying my opinion, I'm just saying there has to be stuff.
Hang on. You've got the microphone.
Yeah, I just think it's really, they don't have the rules of accountability, and that's the issue. You don't conduct yourself like that, and these companies are.
yeah, and then so my role is to try and, you might not like it, Ash, but to point it out and just say, the community, this room, other communities expect better. You've got to do better. Now, can I hold their nose to the ground and make them do it? Well, no, but I would rather try and do that than and amplify your voice and other people's voices than not.
No, we're grateful for the response. I'm just saying, it just feels, when we're trying so hard as a community, and it's great to have you as the avenue, but then the avenue sort of feels like a bit of a dead end.
Yeah, I'm sorry for that. I get it. I've had it before, and people say, well, yes, you've got that power, so what's the use? Well, and that's fair enough. People can hold that view, but I'm in the job, I took it up for the right reasons, and I'm going to give it my best shot to try and help get more accountability. That's all I can promise you. I can't promise to change it, but I turn up to things like that, so I get tonight, so I can go and say to company X, stand in a room with 50 people. They're telling me they haven't got accountability, they haven't got transparency, haven't got confidence in the process. What are you going to do about it? So that's all I can promise you.
Can I ask you, how can you stand here and say you love agriculture and yet you can see short-term gain and long-term detrimental damage to prime agriculture farming. How can you say you love agriculture?
Because I do, and I have seen, and again, this is probably not going to be popular, right? But I have seen across the country, and I'm different from project to project, right? And I don't want to inflame the room, but I've seen where renewable energy and agriculture can coexist. I know it's disruptive, I've seen the disruption, but I've also seen where it can work. So that's what I think is, and I'm not underestimating and I'm not underplaying the disruption to communities, so don't get me wrong, I've seen that too. But I can see agriculture, for people, so what I'll do is I'll call out bullshit, right? You know, I'm not saying that you're saying this, but when people say to me, oh, you know, it's going to be the end of X, or I say, well, I've seen stuff where it can work. You know, that's what we should shoot for. I don't want the end of agriculture. I love agriculture, I love farming, I love rural and regional communities. That's what I said at the beginning. We've got to try and get that outcome. So I can tell you, I love agriculture, that's why I've worked in it my whole life. So I'm not going to do anything that's going to see the end of agriculture. That's not what
Okay, that's
Well, that's your opinion.
Question down the front here.
Can you give me the examples of the communities where it's actually working? You're saying you've seen it, you haven't actually listed some communities.
Yeah, there's some communities up in Queensland where it's gone well. There's some communities, in fact, in Queensland where Western Downs Regional Council, where the communities, it's gone well up there. Hewenden, around the McIntyre. Now, I'm not saying that everyone in the community loves it, but it would be a project or some projects where I can look at it and go, it is better than what might be happening in some other areas, and the community seems to be going well and there seems to be benefiting from.
Linda?
Thank you. Belinda Randall, we're impacted by the proposed Ario wind farm being developed by Cubico. Lots of things I struggle comprehending, but this buffer offset zone that's applied to over our farm, we're not part of the project. We believe there'll be potentially restrictions on what we can do in that space. All our farming infrastructure is in that buffer zone, including a house that we would like to renovate one day, even our own home falls within 2 kilometres of the project. Well, what's happening to advocate for this offset buffer zone being removed from people who aren't even part of the project, but are subjected to the conditions, subjected to the conditions of the developer?
So I'm very happy to take up your specific issue and circumstances.
I actually have, and a person from your office called Linda Plum.
Yep. What does it say?
All we got, you took our your organisation took our concerns, but it felt like it's just thrown back in our face. Like every concern we had, it just felt like at the end, it's hard to develop a wind farm. That's sort of the takeaway message I got. The second takeaway message I got was the host has more rights than us. Yes. Our rights are not, but where are our rights in this issue? And then thirdly, there was even a statement about what you alluded to, tensions and things like that. Well, my neighbours who don't talk to me, they choose not to talk to me. I must make them feel uncomfortable. I don't know, but we just want straight answers. We just want a map with a turbine layout for starters, and that's not forthcoming. But then we're labelled as divisive in our community. Everyone's had that experience, so I won't go on. But yeah, this offset buffer zone, what's happening to stop us having to bear that responsibility for that position?
Yep. I accept that it's a concern, and all I can do is keep raising the concerns with, was it Cubico? Did you say?
Cubico, yeah.
Um,
But it's all projects. The Corridor Energy Park's exactly the same.
It's a Victorian state issue.
The buffer zones are included on neighbouring land, restricts the neighbour's capacity to utilise or use that land in the way they wish. That's absolutely not fair. It's part of the poor process. Sonia Kilkenny is not acknowledging that as a process. Sonia Kilkenny, I feel, has to resign. The entire planning process has been so poor, so appallingly bad and impacting people like Belinda and other neighbours. It's just terrible. If the hosts want the wind farm, the buffer zone must be on their land. And our policy is 2 kilometres buffer zone on host land. And we'll be standing up very strongly for that. Yes, Julie.
Just going on, I've got a lot of things. Everybody knows me here, it's okay. So the tube is here. Okay. I tried to drive and I've got a bad back. So an example of the buffer zones, a housing permit, building permit was put into the Bullock Shire. And they were told, because you own the land, you actually don't need a permit, you need a road permit. Then all of a sudden Westwind came in and the Shire got back to them and said, by the way, you now need a permit. It went to VCAT. The Shire said, yes, we'll give you the permit. Westwind took them to VCAT, they lost. And it was basically ruled that a wind project is more important than a person's house. That was a very dangerous statement to make. Now, you said that you took on the role because you want to make sure communities are better off. And you are very defensive, and yes, we are very defensive as well, because we feel you are failing in that role. We are victims of this. What Belinda said, I have email after email writing to you. We have people in this community who are trying to get answers. How it starts off, you're in an area, you're told by people who are experts in the renewable energy, you'll never end up with any of it in your area. You're too far from transmissions, it doesn't exist. Somebody decides, here we go, let's get some cash. They decide to host. Next minute, we're now all neighbours of a project. All of a sudden, Alistair Park now has a massive res. So now we're living in a res zone. And it keeps snowballing. And the magic word doesn't work for everybody, and that is the word benefits. Because as Ash said, you know what, you can throw $1 million on the table at the footy and some of us would never front up again. Money does not buy everything. Now the other thing, you use words like best practice, volunteering standards. They are not legally binding. These companies just seem to have a free-for-all. They have no social licence, but they've put out a newsletter that is now saying we have community benefit grants. And that's how they get around people who don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers, don't want to stand up. A lot of people in this room have their lives on hold. Do I want to live 1,500 metres from a turbine? No. I've given 35 years to agriculture in the paddock, not at your level, and that is all under threat. The one thing you haven't touched on is noise. 2010, and it was for 60-metre turbines. It is a statistic. And if you were doing anything, what about that poor lady, wind farm living, and what she goes through down at Lowell? EPA can't help it, you can't help it, it just seems to be, you wonder why we have no faith in you. The insurance you mentioned, how far out does that go? Our objective as farmers, as you would know, is to grow the biggest biomass we possibly can. The speed of the fires. You've now got turbines that have wake effect, things like that. We had the specialist or the president of the aerofighters come down saying, we will not fly in amongst turbines. You've got this community sitting on the eastern side of that project. If a fire gets going, it can't be fought until it's out. There's experts in this room that can tell you the speed, even though Westwind's barrister said, look, we love your passion, your commitment to the CFA, but we don't believe anything you say. You don't have the power to say it. You wonder why we're all traumatised by it. Decommissioning. West Wind have said they will not put money away until about 15th year mark when they're paid. They are well and truly going to be long gone. Hexham said the same thing. It won't be happening to them. So, and what was your input into the inquiry in New South Wales Parliament with the res up there and what's been happening? Did you have any role in that? Like, you come in and you say, we don't believe you and this and that, and your intentions may be great, but we are not living that experience.
Thank you. I can only do what my best is, and if you think I'm failing, then you're entitled to an opinion. But I can tell you.
Don't play the victim.
I'm not. I'm just saying. Yeah, I'm happy. If that's your opinion that I'm failing.
Well, I'd rather you weren't. I'd rather you change my opinion.
Well, I can just say.
And you have just really been on the defensive. Rise to the occasion. You want communities better off.
And I'm working hard to try and get that.
Well, bloody harder.
Okay. Well, that's why I turned up to hear what your thoughts are. So I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm just saying.
I wanted to offend you, and we were, what your limitations were, and you were trying to answer it.
Yep.
But I fronted you in Bendigo, and I fronted you at Ballarat, and you bagged us out for holding that sign, and you just always feel, it always feels, and correct me if I'm wrong, which you...
Julie, just, there's some people at the back that can't quite hear you.
I'm having a rant in case you hadn't noticed. But you were at Bendigo at a renewable thing, you went to the Bush Summit in Ballarat.
I didn't. But...
You did, because my husband was holding that sign to Prime, one of the TV, TV still exists, one of those things, and you said to him, oh, you're going to get tired of handing that. You were definitely there. Even DJ was there.
Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't.
At Ballarat?
No. I know Ballarat well, right, but I wasn't at the Bush Summit in Ballarat. But anyway, go on.
Move on.
Yeah, go on. Look, I'm really sorry that you feel that way, and all I can do, right, I can look you in the face and in the eye and say, I'm trying to help the situation. That's all I can offer you, and that's what I can promise you. If it's not good enough, I'm sorry. But that's all I can do. I have limited powers, but I can guarantee you I'm doing my absolute best to try and get good outcomes. That's all I can do.
Okay, and look around this room. The hours that we have volunteered to making this better for ourselves, which is your role, that you are paid for.
I said that at the beginning. I said that you got fatigue and you'd rather be doing something else. I absolutely agree, accept that. So
Since you're 2 years into it, what do you hang your hat on that you have achieved, that you want to achieve? Even DJ's nervous about decommissioning, and he trotted down to Melbourne to try and get it re-included.
Well, I hopefully just articulated that I'm trying to get good outcomes on decommissioning.
Try.
I wish I could snap my fingers, I can't.
Okay, but try.
We're on the way to getting good outcomes on insurance and decommissioning.
Though.
Well, but look, I'm not going to try and kid you. I'm trying to help. Right? If it's not good enough for you, then I'm sorry.
But we're living it.
I know you are. That's why I'm here, Julie. That is why I'm here. I didn't have to turn up, right? I'm here to listen to you. I'm not the victim. I love coming to these sorts of things. See, here, otherwise I wouldn't be doing the job, I can assure you.
But you're not doing it.
Well, not to your standard, but I can just tell you that I'm trying to do my best. If it's not good enough, I'm sorry. And it's not a victim thing. I'm just saying, what do you want me to say to that? If she says it's not good enough, I'll try harder. Well, if that's not going to be good enough, I'm not sure what you want.
Even when you say decommissioning and all this business, where are they going to put it? Landfill is getting filled to the brim.
Yeah, and that's part of the conversation. Where's the steel go? Where's the glass go? It's all part of the reform and work that we're doing.
So it can't help agricultural land, it can't help the environment, it's not good for anything. put them where they're not going to hurt anything. There's nothing good about it.
Where are they going now, the ones that we decommissioned?
The first ones are being decommissioned down at,
Down back.
yeah,
Yeah, because I know the guy, the first one put it in here. So where are they going?
I don't know yet.
They haven't actually been taken.
They haven't been
down,
taken
that's
down.
the issue.
So the question was, what's going to happen with the first wind turbines down at Codrington?
Project, yes.
No, that's fine. So
And that,
you would think that if the wind developers would like to have more wind farms, they would prove they can decommission these properly. But
Yes.
that still hasn't happened.
And some of the water already come down too.
so Codrington is the first one.
All right, Janet.
All eyes on that.
I'm trying to control the questions, but Janet,
Hi, Tony. Look, one thing I think you really can help with is the EES process and what we have to go through. Now, we went through the EES process. The chair was basically stacked against us. She's one of our world's climate change people. She's personally involved in a solar project around Ballarat, so she can never be seen as independent. We had 2 QCs, 4 other top-end legals against the community, which is 2 or 3 of us. And these people, that their experts, were deliberately telling mistruths about our situation in the Wimmera because they didn't even, some of them had never even been here. The agriculture guys, Ross said earlier, was from the Strathbogies or somewhere. No idea what's going on here. And that was all accepted by the chair and then the minister. We went along, we tried our best, we did a 200 and whatever page submission, all ignored, all completely ignored. Ross turned up for 19 days. We got shut down every time we wanted to ask a question, except in our 10-minute slots. It's a process that is so wrought, and that needs changing to a much more even, independent. But the other thing, I believe, I don't like the QCs and I don't like the legals, but I think the whole thing should be under oath, because then everybody has to tell the truth, and there was definitely untruths going on. So I think that's something that you really could have an impact in.
Yes, thank you. I agree with you about the inequitable or uneven process. It's not, and I've said, I'll keep saying it, it is an uneven process. People in this room, I suspect, are largely not planners or environmental scientists or environmental lawyers, and companies have much more resources to engage in the EES process. And it's my view that 30 days to look through a 500 or 1,000 page EES for someone that's that's got family or business, or it's not their day job. So I think it's very uneven and needs to be changed, and people need to be given more resources and time to actually engage in the process, because and the second part of that is that they need to be provided with advice and demonstration where their issues have been considered, either taken up or not, and why they haven't been taken up. Just that confidence in the process. You might not like the decision, but if you can understand how, this is my philosophy, you can understand how it's been made, it doesn't mean you have to like it, but at least you get a little bit more confidence. So I don't think people have enough confidence in the EES process because they don't understand it. We're not all town planners. I don't know how, I think, and again I've said this to planning ministers, we've got to get the community to better understand how decisions and planning decisions are made, so they can at least have confidence that, okay, they're all the right things, whether it's fire or water flow or anything else, has been adequately considered. So I'm a unity ticket.
just if I may add a little tiny bit, Andy Farrell was the name of the QC, but he was a QC in planning. Now he would be costing quite a bit, but he had an offsider and he had another 2 in his team, so there was a team of 4. And realistically, I was the only one on the opposite side of that position, trying to do my very best as just a lay tractor driver And I held them to account on a couple of key issues, which was very interesting. And at one point, they were very embarrassed when they had the numbers wrong for the number of residences within 5 kilometres of the project. And there was extreme embarrassment. A halt was called to clarify the numbers, and they were totally incorrect. So that sort of error, I think, should absolutely be done properly, and that was clearly wrong. Debbie, question.
I'd just like to highlight that farmers aren't against progress, but there needs to be a lot of common sense, and the processes for these things to be solved. When people shut down debate, it's showing that they want an outcome. When people are slandered because they have an opinion, even at your thing, that in the inquiry, it shows that they're not interested in truth and doing what's best for all people. They've got certain interests that they're defending. And I'd just like to highlight some common sense, because as farmers, if you're opposed to putting wind turbines up, you're slandered by, especially in the city, by your rallies, you're considered backward, you don't know what you're talking about. I'd like to highlight the fact that energy, there's been, farmers aren't against progress. Now with the development of energy, we started off with hay, less dense forms of energy, and progress went from less dense, so hay, we fed a horse some hay, and we had to feed a horse a lot of hay to get to Ballarat. Then we've developed oil, we've developed coal, we've developed gas and uranium, and we've gone from less dense forms of energy to higher dense forms of energy to produce energy. So explain to me how going to less dense forms of energy in wind and solar is efficient and is reliable and is cheaper and is progress. And because our governments, our schools are indoctrination centres. I'm a teacher, I'm retired now. Once upon a time, we were not allowed to teach what we thought, like our political views. We had to be neutral, but we helped kids to explore what they believed in. We never taught that the world was going to end because we're killing it. We looked at the evidence. Is there evidence for? Is there evidence against? And we encourage kids to come up with solutions for things. But now they're being told that climate change is happening. I'm not necessarily disagree with climate change, but we are killing the planet. And if we don't do something, it's the end of the world. And kids, they're not being taught what is the evidence that it's happening. They're being told it is happening, and it's even into their readers. It's put in their little prep readers that climate change, the man is producing fossil fuels, that greenhouse gases, that's killing the environment. And I'm going, no, we don't look at evidence. If you Google something, it's really hard to find anti-stuff on this stuff. So you tell me, I said, farmers, we're not against progress. If you can demonstrate, this is the issue in our society, but when you go to an inquiry and people don't even want to listen to you because and you bring evidence and facts and they're disregarded, what does that say about the project and the validity of it and who is it benefiting? Because it's not benefiting us, it's not even benefiting the poor people or the vulnerable. Is they're benefiting someone. Or comment, sorry.
See what Mahar does with that.
There's a lot in that. I think it's probably best to leave it as a comment now. But what I will say is that I am very supportive of, and I have forever, agriculture and everything else, evidence-based decisions. So science and facts and evidence needs to be the basis of decisions. So I'm agreeing with you there. I'm not going to get into a debate about who's got the best science or the correct science, but the evidence needs to be the basis for decision.
And there needs to be debate, true debate, not shut down.
Linda. It's all yours.
Thank you for my question again. Just before you talked about public liability insurance, and you talked about clauses or something being put into contracts, whose contracts would they be? And if they were would they be part of neighbour agreements and therefore would then become part of a project? So, yeah, could you just elaborate a little bit more about this public liability insurance?
Yes, and it's not done yet, but we've got a clause that is going to cover neighbours. So how it might look, and I won't go into all the detail because it's not done, it's not totally agreed to, but suffice just two things. The neighbours of a development will not be liable. The companies will commit in writing in a contract with the host and with surrounding landholders that they will hold them harmless. It's a hold harmless model is what it is. That the neighbours will have confidence that they are not liable for an accident that occurs on their property that impacts on assets next door or 5 kilometres. And someone asked the question before about how far is it, 2 or 5 or 20 kilometres? They're not putting it did start with 5 kilometres, but that was quickly dismissed, given how quickly fires and things go. So it'll be everyone within a reasonable region.
A host contract.
So the host is already in, it's already in like a host.
How would we be aware of that?
Because you'll be a neighbour, and if you're concerned about it, if you're worried about the risk, then you'll be covered through an arrangement with the company to say, we won't hold landholder. Well, I'm not sure whether you have to sign it, to be honest, because that then begins a contract, but the company would say, everyone within, and these are the final bits of detail, right? That everyone within a region is held harmless for any accidental damage to that piece of infrastructure.
I think that the question, or basically the question is, do you have to sign up as a willing neighbour to benefit from that scheme? If you want nothing to do with it, won't sign up to a neighbour agreement.
No, you don't have to be signed up to a neighbour agreement, because so if you talk about it, garden variety neighbour agreement, if you're leaving beside some panels or a turbine, and if, and it's not always the case, but if you get $1 a year because you live beside a turbine, you're in some sort of financial contract agreement, right? This is not, it'll be if the person two properties over doesn't have an agreement to get paid X dollars a year, they're still covered. Does that answer the question?
Yes, if that's the case.
That's where we're going.
Because neighbours, as my understanding, if you sign up to a neighbour agreement, you agree to be impacted by the project.
Whatever's in the contract, yes.
Yes.
You'll get a payment because there's some whatever, but yes.
But that was the question. Do you have to do that to be able to
No, because not everyone will have a neighbour agreement. It's only directly. But the people 5 to 10 kilometres away will still be covered. It'll be held harmless.
Tony, Jeff was the only one. When this plan, if things don't go ahead, as you can see, the signs here,
Yeah.
is there a backup plan for power for Australia? I'm not just going to sit back, all we can hear is it's all going ahead.
Yeah.
As far as we're concerned, it's not bloody going ahead. Now, is there a backup plan for power, for nuclear or coal?
No, I don't know of that.
Why aren't they thinking about it?
Well, I'm sure someone is, but that I
As you see by in here, it's not going here.
No, I can see that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Same enough.
Any other questions? Jason Ballings. He loves the microphone, Jason.
Thanks, Ross. I'll tell a few jokes about some of the eastern suburbs of Warren and Tony. It's not really lucky. We don't get electricity turbines or towers. We get mines instead. So that's our privilege. But just, I've always wondered, so I'm not really that emotionally involved. So I'm looking outside the square. But does Australia get cheap, reliable electricity? Let's say this stuff goes up and they're all scattered everywhere and hypothetically speaking. What's that going to do to Australia? The cities, our city cousins, they get cheap, reliable power out of this or not? Because that's the fundamental question I've got. We're going through all these issues, there's countless issues with this, yet what's the fundamental? I know we've got Greta Thunberg in the background with the little net zero thing, but that aside, why do they bother with it?
Straining the temperature that I said I wouldn't go into, but the energy system, let me just say this, and I'm not an energy expert, right, but the energy system that we built, that was built 200 years ago, or 100 years ago, is not going to cope with the current energy demand. So we need, my view is that we need a new energy system. Now we could argue whether it's nuclear or the energy system right now is broken and it needs fixing. And what governments around the world and states and Commonwealth government here is shooting for is sustainable, reliable, affordable energy. Now we can argue about that until tomorrow, but what I do know is that energy demand has never been greater on a system that is not built for air fryers and phones and 3 TVs and 3 fridges and plugging cars and everything like that. That is a fact. So we need to upgrade the energy system. That's what I know.
I do agree with that. Like, I mean, it's like a data centre. I don't want one in the backyard, but I don't mind downloading all this stuff to the cloud either. So I can understand it's like that. But yeah, I just think we've got plenty of coal, plenty of nuclear. I just think we can do it better. I just think that's just my opinion. That's
no,
I'm not an electrical engineer either.
That's why I'm sort of technology agnostic.
All right, well, the reality is that the government's subsidising the big consumers, which are the refiners, and Tomago up in Newcastle was subsidised $2.5 billion of taxpayers' money, but we're also subsidising the production of energy. So the taxpayers are on a hiding to nothing. They're subsidising the production and the consumption of energy. And when these data centres get up and running, ooh, that's like big energy, man.
Data centres a whole other conversation.
Well, I went to the Energy Week down in Melbourne and it could have been translated as a data centre.
Yes, I agree. I agree. I think there's a lot of similarities. So,
any other questions? Well, Dorothy, all right. The Dorothy Dixer again.
Yes, I would like to know how many blackouts have been caused by coal-fired power stations that we're told aren't fit to be repaired or replaced. You can't tell me that that would cost a lot more than all this other conglomeration.
Dorothy, I don't know the answer to how many blackouts, but
I think we've just been told lies that they don't think. China, I found out today that China is building hundreds more coal-fired power stations because they could not depend on the solar and wind. And there's 1.25 billion people apparently that they're trying to save from freezing to death.
Did you want to have a crack at that?
No, I don't. Because I don't have the numbers on how many coal-fired power stations or panels or turbines China's putting up. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay. You're on stage, Will.
Thank you. G'day, Tony. Will Ellsworth. I've driven up from Ballarat tonight. so apologies for being late. If I ask you something or make a statement to you, it's not a personal attack. It's purely on the metrics of the whole issue. The first thing is, I suppose you've gone over your role with everyone here. I'm sorry I'm late. If I'm covering old ground, tell me to shut up. But I suppose you've gone over your position, being the Energy Commissioner, which is to, it's very basic, handle community complaints, improve project transparency, promote best practices for wind farm, large solar projects, energy storage and major transmission lines. Has that been covered? Yeah. Right, because where I'm from, we've got the Ballarat Bendigo line, 220 kV power line. We had a lot to do with Andrew Dyer. In the end, he fell on his sword because he had the guts full of us. But we've got the Ballarat Bendigo transmission line, which you should be aware of, with 26 sag points. Are you aware of that?
Not aware of the sag points, but I know the lot.
Well, there's 26 sag points. The Labor Party in Ballarat don't want to know about it. It goes through some of the most fertile volcanic ground in Victoria in terms of red soil and irrigation infrastructure. So you put a stubby in tonight, come back in the morning, you've got a slab. In layman's terms, but there's 26 sag points on that line, and I stand corrected. I reckon it's been 3 or 4 years. How long since Andrew's been gone? 2. Well, it's probably 3 years, and nothing's been done on that line to fix it. It goes through the Wombat State Forest. If something happens with that, you're going to burn right to the edge of Melbourne. I mean, this is just a national disgrace. I'm making more of a statement. I'll get to where I want to go in a second. So you're aware that there's issues with the line?
I'm not aware of the sag points, but I can tell you I know that country quite well because I know it well.
Well, what they've done is, in 26 spots, they've put a sign underneath the power line in using their brain power. They've put signs up in people's paddocks so they can't use their equipment. So that's to cover their backside, and this has gone on for a couple of years and hasn't been fixed. So that's one issue I think you should look into, and it should be fixed.
Have you, I'm happy to take it up specifically, but have you asked if you haven't got an answer, or you?
Oh, we've given them hell for years, but Catherine King doesn't want to know about it, and she's the Energy Infrastructure Minister. I won't give a commentary on that low life. The next thing is, I've been involved with wind turbines for 20 years. I'm yet to be given a contract that doesn't leave the host, I suppose we'll call them, I'd rather call them an idiot, but we'll say the host, where they don't end up with decommissioning. And I'm happy to be proven wrong. You're meant to provide best practice. Andrew Dyer recommended, I believe, something about decommissioning, yet nothing's been done. We saw some clowns go to Melbourne recently wanting retrospective decommissioning and decommissioning funds implemented. Unfortunately, they don't realise you've got to go to a solicitor, not the parliamentarians. The reason nothing's done with any of this is you'll be long gone. The politicians here will be long gone. Some of the hosts will be dead and buried. And everyone thinks that we can wash our hands of this and kick it down the road. And these communities have companies like Westwind come in and cause absolute shit and mayhem. Now with the power line, we had AusNet, and I've told this story many times, we had AusNet land officers ring up a gentleman whose father was on his deathbed in Ballarat Base Hospital and said, when your family circumstances rectify, we'd like to come and see you, flip you a bit of cash so we can get into your paddock. This gentleman's only got 100 acres, so it's a very small block, but the block's probably worth $20,000 to $25,000. If a power line goes through, it'll be worthless. This bloke's dealing with the death of his father. His father's about to die. His last words from his father within a couple of days was, no, he didn't say, I love you, son, rah, rah, rah. He said to him, no power line in the fucking paddock. Now that bloke, that's the last memory he has of his father because of these charlatans, carpetbaggers and lowlifes. AusNet have never discredited that. I can have the bloke sign an affidavit, and that's just one example. And we've mentioned this to Andrew Dyer. Nothing's been done. These companies come in by stealth. If this was so good, why don't they come to a community like this here, Westwind, come in tonight, put all the paperwork on the table with all the contracts and say what we're going to do for the community, instead of going around getting a few people who have got a short leash financially, stitching them up and then trying to fragment the community. Now, Tony, you'd be well aware of this across Australia. You can see what's happening. I don't expect an answer, I'm just saying what's going on. The people have had a guts full of it. To magnify that, the Liberals and Nationals can say and do what they bloody like, because no one trusts them. 2 weeks ago they voted with the government on gun amendments, which they promised they wouldn't do. Last week they voted for treaty through education by stealth with the government and the Greens. The people are pissed off, they're annoyed. I don't begrudge a neighbour wanting to put turbines up, but I would have the guts and decency to go and say to him, listen mate, I'm thinking of doing this, what do you think? I wouldn't sneak around and do it. And the problem is, and I'd class you as probably the lone police person in this issue, but you should be saying to politicians, is this how we want Australia to be? Is this how Australia was meant to function? How was this community centre built? How was this town built? These smartasses come in, like Toby Geyer at West Wing. We've had them from Origin. We rolled the bastards because we got the community against it. We got the contracts. The whole thing stinks. It doesn't stack up. But the politicians are letting this crap go on. If it was so good, they should come in here, put all the stuff on a table, and let everyone have a look and say, look, we'll get the best benefit. I've got friends who have got turbines. I said to them, you mugs. Some of them are only getting 7,000, some of them getting 40. The company gets 850,000 per turbine. They don't pay you for the poles and wires. They make you carry a caveat. And then at the end, after it could be sold who knows how many times, it'll be a shelf company. I mean, this is destroying the fabric. And I'm sorry if I'm sort of talking to you. This is destroying the social fabric of our society. And I blame it on the politicians for letting it happen. It is an absolute effing disgrace. I've seen people who've nearly wanted to blow their heads off. I have to ring people now and again every few weeks. I've got to ring them and G them up because they're so down in the mouth with bullshit that's going on, and the politicians are letting this happen, and everyone goes, oh, it's too hard. Oh, we're going to do this. Now, I think for the hosts, the company should have a decommissioning clause in it at the start and a fund. I've got no issue protecting the hosts, but they don't do it. The Mean West wind farm up there, the decommissioning doesn't kick in until about 16 or 17 years. It's in their contract. We got the contract. It's an absolute disgrace. And I mean, Tony, your office or department should be across these contracts. I've got a sister who's a solicitor, property solicitor. She lectures at Melbourne part-time. She said the whole thing's so wrong. With the transmission line, we got that contract within 2 days. It doesn't stack up. It's really destroying the fabric of our society. Now, if the people want to sign up, I've got no issue. But I wish they'd prove to me that this shit stacks up. It destroys the community, it fractures the community. Our community down just north of Ballarat took 20 years to rectify after the issues we had with wind power, and then it was Origin. And then AusNet came in, well, that galvanised everyone. But I don't think the message is getting back to these lightweight, pathetic politicians who don't have a spine, who 100 days out from an election say, oh, we're going to stop something, and then the last 2 weeks they've done a flip. Are you really canvassing what's happening to these communities? Because I've seen you go across the East Coast. I'm sure the message is probably given a lot harder than what I'm giving. But this shit doesn't stack up. I don't care about the metrics of it works, it doesn't work. We all know it's not going to work. But that's what we've got. Left-wing ideology, but that's an issue for another day. But we should be concerned about mental health. It's never mentioned mental health. I've seen people, as I said, want to blow their brains out. They're destroyed. Families are fractured, friendships are fractured for life because of some carpetbagger that's come in and said, oh, you sign up before old mate signs up next door. Oh, you'll get the money. They tried that with a transmission line down home, and we believe about 85 to 90% haven't signed up to WRL. I can tell you it doesn't matter. I've got 10 farmers at Springbank to Dean that will never sign, and some of them, most of them are Irish, so they're fucking crazy with a few beers, and some of them had relatives in Eureka Stockade, and they were lightweights, the ones in the Eureka Stockade. These people will never let them in, because what will happen is their 200 acres, 100 acres will be ruined. So anyone up here who think you're going to put a power line, go down to Springbank, go down there and tell them we're going to put a multiple power lines through your place. You'll never get it in. If you go into a pub or a football club, you won't get out with your life. The people are pissed off, they're annoyed, they're hurt, they're despondent, and the Labor Party are going to lose Eureka. They're going to lose Ripon. The Nationals are going to lose Murray Plains. They'll probably lose Mildura and Lowen, because I don't even mention the rare earth crap that's going on. And this is meant to be done in the interest of our society. We've got people in Melbourne, and they always get there and say, oh, there's a divide, the people in the city want the power. Bullshit. We saw in COVID what happened when Andrew stopped the food trucks going in. People in the city really appreciate where their food and fibre come from. There's no divide. It's a politicians trying to make a divide. It's so sad what's happening. But are you canvassing this message?
Well, I am, and some people might think that it's meaningless, but I can tell you this is the message that I am giving to politicians, that we and the companies, is that we've got to do better so there's equity and people understand and can see what's happening. So that's, I said before, you want to hear, but that's the reason I took this job on, is to try and get that message to the companies and to decision makers to say we're actually got to do this better. Andrew Dyer's report said the community engagement and benefits were pretty appalling. And I stood with, I was CEO of the NFF, just for whatever it's worth then, I stood with Chris Bowen and Andrew Dyer, and I said this report needs to be acted on, and the recommendations, the 6 themes and 9 recommendations, need to be implemented and something done about it. And that's why I took the job on. Now let me just, two things. Some of those crazy Irish people around Ballarat and Bungaree and Springbank, there's a few Mahars down there. And some
they're the softies, the Mahars.
Okay.
They're the softies.
Anyway, they're my relations, but they are.
No, I would say that quite honestly, they're the soft ones, and if you met them, you'd think they're the worst.
Yeah. The second thing is you missed it, and maybe some people weren't as happy, but the decommissioning thing is, I'm working on it, right? I agree with you that there needs to be money in an account that is quarantined and that it is watertight and totally secure, that the landholder, the community and the council is not responsible for these assets whenever the end of their life is. When we're all gone and whoever's owning land at that stage is not responsible for it. So I'm not there yet, but that is an issue that I am working on. There is, bore you to tears, that there's a government report that is being done, that I'm part of, the environment. So, I don't know that yet, right? So, this is part of the
Look, I mean, Tony, you've got the opportunity here to leave your mark on this. And I say that in the nicest possible way. I don't expect you to stop the whole renewable rollout. That's not going to happen. But I do expect you to canvass the issues. And I've said to Danny O'Brien, who's like a lettuce leaf on steroids, and he said when we got there down there, and one of the spud growers at Springbank got there and chased Elbow out of town with the tractor, and he is one of those people. He was a bar. I said to O'Brien, why not protect the people? Like, you know, we've got these turbines from the start and put a decommissioning, and that'd take a lot of the angst in it out of it.
I agree. That's what I said before. You weren't here, but
no.
The insurance and the decommissioning stuff. If you can take that off the table, it's not going to suit. It's not going to make everything okay, but it'll remove some of the irritations and the concerns from the community. So I can guarantee you, I am working, and my team are working hard to get that issue sorted.
I'm so disappointed in the politicians. I mean, this shit's gone on for 20 years, and I know people have got wind turbines. and they'll have a crack at me, a couple of beers, they'll have a crack at me, and I'll have a crack back. I hope you're saving your coin because you're going to fucking need it. Yeah, some of them are walk around to get 7 to 10. That's not going to pull it down to 650 at the moment. 1,000. I mean, these people have been had. I know people who've got one bloke's got 20 turbines, and he knows he's been had properly at Walborough. And this is because, as a citizen, he might be an idiot, but as a citizen, he hasn't been given the due diligence or respect from the politicians to protect. If we had people going into the cities doing this with some scheme, I suppose you've got data centres to a degree, there'd be an outcry. But the problem is they see the regions as a place to carpet bomb this stuff. It's soul destroying, I think.
Thanks, Will. That was very passionate. All along from the very start, we've been calling for a proper process, and that includes decommissioning and the funds to be held attached to the land title, so that that can be certainty at the end. Because otherwise, it's absolutely exposed to rorting and exploitation of some of the...
Yeah, and again, it's not done yet, right? But I know of some projects and contracts where it is actually being written into. It's actually starting. The thing we've been talking about, it's not in everyone's contract up until now, but it's being incorporated into some.
Well, I disagree. I completely disagree with that.
Completely.
Because I haven't seen a contract that's in it yet.
No. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's starting to happen now. Now, it's not saying the ones, the turbines up now that have got them in there.
Well, anyone that's signed up, and some of them have signed up 3 or 4 years ago, they're cooked. Cooked, properly skewered.
We'll see.
All right. Well, look, I'm still planning to finish at 9, but Julie's going to have the last word. That be okay by everyone?
Thank you. Just quickly, the King's Council for West Wind, basically at the planning panel, said that decommissioning is not a planning issue. It's not something that needs to be in the contracts. It is an end of life, and therefore it is not their concern. So they were 100% duck shoving that, and they didn't want to get involved. They don't want to be putting that sort of money up front. So I'll be interested to see how you go getting proponents on board with that.
I'm reading the question tomorrow, so I'll take it up. But I've talked to a lot of companies, and they know it's an issue, and state governments know it's an issue. So again, it's not done yet, but it is, I am probably naively optimistic, but it's going to get done.
As long as you're trying, we're pleased. When you're talking to Toby tomorrow, can you please ask him? He had a comment in one of the newsletters basically saying that as proponents, we need to be very mindful of how much we're contributing to community benefits because we need to keep the power costs down. So he was already basically backtracking from what he was contributing to community benefits. So there's another thing that we're up against, and it's their deception. Like they put a tent at the show, whoever happened to walk past, their kid grabbed a balloon, they were a number. And then they use those people, like they said they had community support, and yet they'd only had about 0.02% of the whole population of the Shire. Like the figures that they run with, and as Janet said, you bring these issues up and it just glazed over, and you wonder why we're disappointed with the results, because their effort is atrocious, and a lot of what they have, you think, you pulled that from another project. That's not even relevant to Warrnambool. It's cut and paste. And it's the same organisations and companies doing it for all the wind companies.
There's no guardrails. That's why pricks like Guy flood around. He said he'd come out and carpet bomb us at Smeaton with turbines, and we said, bring them all out. Come out and we'll soon show you what we do with blokes with wind turbines and you. Little turd never came out near our way. He's an absolute grifter, but there's no guardrails. So people like him can go into these communities and cause the shit they can because there's no one's there to hold them to account. If I went in some community and did that, they'd bloody turf me out. It's disgraceful.
You might get turfed, yeah.
I might, yeah. I'll keep sweet with you, Julie.
Right, okay. Any last burning question? Tracy to ask. Gee, that was very fortunate.
Sorry. Tony, in your introduction you mentioned the misinformation and disinformation.
Yep.
And I just want to respond with that by saying that that really hurts people. We've been called all kinds of names, and Deb was talking about that. We've been called silly billies by a politician in federal parliament for opposing projects. The research, the scientific research is not up to date. It's not modern, it's not relevant. What are you doing to advance advocacy for relevant scientific research for human health effects of people living next to wind turbines? I know you have sat with people in tears explaining their situations. What are you doing to get some relevant research done into these massive monstrosities that are going to be beside our homes, along with relevant research for agricultural impacts? You might not think that there are impacts, but most of us would believe that there are, and there are researchers working on that, and we would like some attention paid to that. And there's a Professor Emeritus from Sydney University that's doing a lot of research on wind wake and soil drying, and we all know about that, and we would like some attention paid to that because we're farming around these projects in and amongst, and we want to continue to do that successfully.
Thanks, Tracy. So what I said before was not intended to suggest that anyone in this room or is spreading the disinformation. What I meant was that there is so much information out there, and we're living in the information age, so you can Google anything you want. But what we need is accurate, reliable, transparent information to make decisions on. So all of the what I call mis and disinformation is making a really complex, difficult problem much more difficult and challenging than it should be. So and then I said that I want to be a trusted source of information. So I'm doing, and I have asked about that, and it may well be a flair, but I have asked the question about updated health impacts, and I'll keep asking for more money to do more research so that we can be confident that all of these things aren't having a detrimental impact on people's health.
Well, our children are going to be the guinea pigs, and Australians are guinea pigs at the moment, and it's just not acceptable to us, and we're not going to. We're not going to let it happen. The premise
that I was saying before about the right information, so that and you may not like it, but if the science and evidence needs to be there. So, and I do think that as technology, I said this about the setbacks, but I mean it as well as health. As the technology increases and changes, we need to make sure that the health impacts and things are monitored in the same way. So I'm totally agree with that. But let me just say that things like shadow flicker and what's the other one? Setbacks. Setbacks, but the noise, sorry, yes. Getting our small team doing some work on that so that we can say, here's what the evidence looks like on shadow flicker and, sorry, Priscilla.
Well, the research isn't there, and we believe that the precautionary approach should be taken. If you don't know something is not going to harm for sure, and there is enough questions, enough people coming to you, surely you must feel bad at night when you can reflect on the number of people that might be being impacted in their homes and their children.
It'd be easier to take a poll of the hosts that have shot through and moved to the beach.
Okay, as long as
Peter Coy, I see he's being used as a pop-up toy from Salt Creek. He moved to the beach. Couldn't handle the noise with his own bloody wind farms down at down below Lake Bolac. And they got him going around spruiking how good this crap is.
Okay, one more question, right? Yeah, all right.
It's a general question.
Well, that's fine, but we are going to have to draw it to a close because we've still got a couple more things to do.
Okay, my name is John. I'm
Probably the question I'm asking is your own report card. Now, I don't need numbers of how many complaints you've had, how you resolved, but just give us a percentage. All the complaints that have come in, and how many you've actually resolved.
That's a good question. I've got the annual report right here. John, I think when you say resolved, are people happy or not? I suppose is what you're asking. Is that what you're asking? Yeah, so that is not going to be high because people aren't happy with the turbine on the panel or the thing being.
So you're not feeling you're doing your job properly?
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that.
Isn't it best to have both parties happy?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's what you shoot for. But I mean, some people have got views around renewable energy that unless those turbines or those panels go away, then they're not going to be satisfied, and I can't change that.
So can you actually give us a percentage?
I can. Well, I look. I'll take it on notice. Right? I'll have a look at the numbers and see out of the 250 or what's the number? We got 350 or something complaints last year.
Last year, in a calendar year, we had 200, just over 200 cases. Now, most of those are closed.
We probably need a microphone.
John, if you're going to say that, or if your question is, are they happy? That number's going to be low, right? So
I'm talking about happy resolved. Now, you're talking.
Well, some of the issues are that they want the turbines to go away, so they're not happy with that. When you say resolved.
Well, when you say something's closed, what does that mean?
Well, that we've done everything we can within our powers to advocate, address, take up the issues that are being raised with us. Now,
So
they have as far as we can possibly do. So what I do is I get a complaint from a person, I go to the company, or whatever it is, they haven't consulted me or they misrepresented or something like that. I'll go to the company and say, here's the evidence, here's the advice that I've got from landholder A or community member B. Show me the evidence to correspond with that and how many times that you have consulted with the community. So I'll investigate it and then make a call on whether it's resolved or not. And in a lot of cases, I'm happy to try and get the number for you to get the result. There's a number of cases where people aren't happy that it's, like I said, I think the process has been followed.
Tony, are you aware that there's a payout with Lake Goldsmith? How the wind farm was breaching its parameters, in terms of noise and so forth. Are you aware that a number of landholders who don't have wind turbines are paid out by the Chinese?
No, I'm not aware of that case.
Okay, you now
are. Yeah. Anyway, I'm happy to talk to you about whether I think I've failed my job. The resolving complaints thing is I would say not a good indicator. You might think it is, but it's an indicator. I'll give it. It's.
Belinda, the last question.
So just following on from John's question about resolution, one of my complaints was that there's no map available yet. There is, or an updated map for the wind farm. I had response from your organisation, so is that considered resolved even though there's still no map?
Yeah, so I don't know the exact letter, right?
Yeah, so in our proposal, there is no map. We keep being told the map will come out quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. Apparently the EES process is going through to referral stage. There's a community benefit fund available, but no map, no updated map. And then, so is that considered resolved in?
If there is, and I'm very happy to have a look at the exact letter, but I suspect what the case is that there isn't. It hasn't been finalised, it hasn't been approved, so there's no map.
But that in your numbers would be considered resolved?
Yes, because there is there is no map, there is no final map, so I can't deliver it.
Okay, Julie, back to the last word again after 5.
Thank you, I can't help myself, but yet the CEO of this Shire has a copy of the map that we are trying to get hold of. So the map does exist, and it existed back in February. And we're still waiting, and we went via you or the people that work with you to try and acquire it. And your people are being told by Cubico that there's no map released yet, it's coming out, da-da-da. We can't even get a map of the paddocks involved, the land involved. Don't worry about the turbine placement, let's get a general. So people of hierarchy seem to see the map. Those that are sitting beside it, sorry, can't deliver.
So again, I'm happy to go into the specific case and see why there isn't a map, but I can assure you, if I've asked for a map and they've just said, oh, sorry, we can't give it to you, there will be a reason for that. It's not just that they can't or won't give it.
All right, well, what I think we have to do is absolutely 1 minute to 9 when the schedule closes. But I'd like you to put your hands together for Tony Mahar and his team. Thank you very much. Normally we have a gift, but I think the assumption was you were getting paid, so we...
No, I don't need a gift. Thank you. Can I just thank you again for turning up? I know it's a Monday night in winter, and I really appreciate the advice and the feedback that you've been giving me. That's why I turn up to these things. Sometimes they're difficult and sometimes they're a complete disaster. This wasn't one of those, but I really appreciate you taking the time to come and see me. I can assure you that I take these views on, and when I'm sitting in front of companies or decision makers, I'm very honest with the feedback that I get and that I give to them. So I don't know if that means anything to you, but I can assure you that I'm very clear in the feedback I give to ministers and decision makers. So thank you for coming up and letting me know.
All right, thank you very much. Now, there was one more comment that was conveyed to me, is that we need better healthcare and particularly mental health care. And there's very serious issues in the Wimmera right now. And poor government policy is responsible for this poor state of mental health. And we absolutely must have a community which is united and caring. And if government has caused this problem, they've got to provide the services for everyone to make sure that we actually have human beings that survive and live through this. It is catastrophic for some people. I'll leave you with that thought. Now, normally I'd close the meeting, but what we